Welcome back for the second part of our International Biomechanics Symposium podcast from the South African Equestrian Federation's podcast From the Horse's Mouth, where we got the incredible opportunity to interview two world-class clinicians for this symposium being run by centerlinecollective.co.za. We spoke to wonderful biomechanic expert Anne Muller from the Netherlands and American saddle fitter expert Amanda Anderson. And we had some really great questions. We had a lot of fun, so we had to split this into two parts. Please enjoy the second part and don't forget to book your tickets. Anne, can I bounce that question to you? Where do you see the biggest disconnect between science and what's actually happening in everyday riding?
I was really into the answer that Amanda was giving. Well, it's the same with the seat, with learning theory. When you use science, you have to use robust science. It's been research has been done all over the world again and again repeatedly and with the same outcomes. That's robust science. That stuff you can use. But there's also those research that says this saddle is a horse-friendly saddle. And there is a problem because one study is no study. If the study is arranged by a university and their students and with a program with people who really understand what they're doing, that's really something different than what Amanda's talking about, a company that is paying for, and then you get advertisements like this is a horse-friendly saddle, and we put that saddle I'm talking about on two of our school horses, and then we found out that it fitted nicely. It was really great for the experienced riders. It was a nice experience. The horse felt like, yeah, wow. And then we used the same saddles with novice riders, and then we saw that the horses declined in their muscles, and there was a problem because the saddle this saddle specifically was filled with air, and when a novice rider rides it, then it starts to bounce.
That's so interesting.
An experienced rider is sitting more still and more in connection with the saddle, but it really hurts the horse when the saddle starts bouncing. And there was this research about that saddle that said this saddle can fit any horse, blah, 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 blah. I have a problem with that, exactly the same. So there's a big gap between companies and people who try to sell stuff and the real knowledge, the robust knowledge we use about biomechanics, learning theory, etc.
And it comes back to that ethics. You know, ethics is so essential, especially when we're all hopefully on the side of someone who can't speak for themselves.
Yes.
Amanda, to come back to you, what are the biggest myths riders still believe about saddle fit that are actively harming their horses?
We can do an entire podcast on this.
Give me the worst one.
Well, the hot topic button right now is seat size for riders.
Okay.
So when I was in Zimbabwe, I guess it's been now about a year and a half, what I noticed, and also here in the States as well, but it really kind of was big in Zimbabwe, is I would see a rider and short backed horses. So we've been breeding horses to have shorter backs because it's a bit easier to collect, whatever. And we're putting riders in too small of seats in order to stay within T18, right? So the horse has 18 ribs. In theory, the saddle should never go over T18. The weight of the rider should never go over T18 because the rib cage is the support structure for the saddle. However, riders are not getting any smaller. And so we're having this a bit of an impasse where riders are buying horses with very, very short backs. And then the saddle fitters are going, well, I have to put you in a very small seat. And they kind of crunch the riders into a too small seat in order to stay within T18. This is kind of a, how do I want to say it? It's a very difficult subject because you never want to say, oh, you're too big to ride a horse. And let's say the rider isn't too big, but the thought process is, well, I have to put you in the smallest seat possible in order to stay within T18. Well, that becomes a problem because if the rider can't access the sweet spot, or what we call the actual seat, which is between the twist and the cantle, if they're bigger than that area, then they are going to bang off the back of the cantle and weight the loins anyway. This also creates a problem because the smaller the tree, right, the smaller the seat, the smaller the tree. Well, in physics, there's a formula that says pressure equals force divided by surface area, which is the long way of saying that when we shorten the surface area, we increase pressure, right? If you're a woman or maybe even a dude and you've ever worn high heels, you understand that when you wear high heels, it's infinitely more painful to walk around than if you wear running shoes because the surface area is smaller. And so the misconception that we have to put riders in a too small seat to stay within T18 is probably one of the most trending topics. The way that we can get around that is, and again, we'll discuss this in the symposium, but if we put the rider where they would sit when they ride their horse bareback, which is at the base of the withers, and we remove the blocks or at least cut them down to the point where they can scoot as far forward on that tree, then we can give them the absolutely longest seat possible for that horse. And then comes the next is it possible to actually talk to people and say, today, you're too big to ride this horse based on what we're seeing? And so that seems to be the most hot topic. The next one is dry spots and wet spots, which we can get into. They're extremely variable. I can take, and I've actually done this. I did an experiment for about a year where I took the same saddle and the same horse, and based on the half pad, the saddle pad, the ambient temperature, the amount of time that the rider rode, affected the wet and dry spots on that horse, and followed 5 horses for about a year. And so we're actually going to devote almost a full day in my symposium to myths and misconceptions.
Great. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
Yeah. You're a sucker for, as soon as you went into dry spots, and I thought that's going to be, there's going to be some kickback there. Everyone seems very committed, as Anne says. We're so committed to the way we've done things. And there's a lovely story, I don't know if either of you have heard it before, where a little girl grows up watching her mother roast the chicken every Sunday. And every Sunday, the mother cuts the bottom off the chicken and then roasts the chicken. And when the girl grows up, she cuts the bottom of the chicken off and starts roasting it. And her little girl says, Mommy, why do we do that? And she says, well, because Granny always did it. And she thinks about it and she phones her mom and she says, why do we cut the bottom of the chicken off? And the gran says, oh, I cut it off because I never had a roasting pan that was big enough.
Love that.
And I love that story because it's so easy to do these, to go on and say, well, dry spots are, because we've always learned it that way.
Right.
And to come back to you, how much of the horse's way of going is actually a reflection of the rider's nervous system and the rider's patterns?
The rider's presence, I can easier talk about than the rider's nervous system. Then I have to be a doctor, or I know when a rider is not feeling great or scared, or it's not nice for the horse. He feels it, he takes it, he feels restricted movement. But how much? I think there are some horses that keep walking in the same way, but there are very rare and seldom seen that keep walking in the same way with a very bad rider. You can buy a very expensive horse and go into the arena and ride your competition and win without being able to really ride this horse in a nice way. But those horses are rare. And I work in riding schools and I work with practical day-to-day problems making people move. So I need to keep my horses healthy and adjust the riders from day one, second one they are on a mounted situation, um, because all the stuff they do up there, seeing in the riding school for 30 years, somebody's leaning backwards and this horse knows the difference between somebody sitting in the right way and sitting in the wrong way, then he starts protesting, shaking his head or walking with slower pace, slower steps, smaller steps, um, or just go faster because the rider is clinging to him and pinching with the legs or something. So it's a one-to-one situation looking at the school horses because we know them so well. They're not for sale. School horses are the most valuable horses we own because they stay with us for 20 years, for example. And the more they work with several riders, advanced riders, but also novice riders, the more they learn to get the difference between this is what I can have, can handle, would I grab, and this is not, I don't like this, or they're asking too much. And we have horses that are habituated to too much leg aids, for example, and it's a school horse. I work with him now uh, these days, and when a rider goes on and it's the rider is asking too fast and not rewarding in this yes, hey, and no system, then he says, I'm not going to do it. Within a minute, he's on the center line and he says, I'm not going to do it. And then you take an advanced rider who's really asking, thank you. You ask walk, I get walk, I get my legs out of it. And then he's really working nicely, ears pinched, and like, oh yeah, I can do that. So yeah,
That's
I think.
wonderful. I also love hearing somebody say our riding school horses are the most valuable horses. I think that's
Well,
so
I'm
because
I'm
they're
I'm
your
the
colleagues.
riding school instructor.
Hmm.
I do a lot. I work with riders all level, but my riding school experience taught me how to fix this.
That's so interesting and so fantastic, and I love
You
prioritizing.
know why?
The,
I can explain why.
yes.
Because the horses we owe stay with us, and the riders change. Every night, a different rider is riding that horse. I know the horse. He has got his way or her way of telling me something's wrong or
Mm,
something's right. Yeah, that's great. And then the day after, somebody else comes and then he does the same thing. So there, the first thing I learned over there was our horses lean to the left or to the right, and he will do the same thing tomorrow night with his rider, with a different rider, with a different child. So then you can um, translate what the horse is doing very easily to the rider because you know the horse, you know his signs. With a private owned horse, the rider always say, yeah, but my horse is different.
mm,
It's not different. It's just a
mm.
horse. Four legs, a head, a tail. It's a horse. And because I know those horses not that well, then I cannot be so spot on.
Yes,
But after 30 years, the horse is right. The horse is
love that.
always right.
I'm going to make a bumper sticker. If Haley's listening, I'm going to make a bumper sticker to sell at Centerline Collective that says the horse is always right.
Yeah.
Um, a professional show jumper, a question for both of you asks, are we as riders asking the wrong questions and hyperfixating on the wrong things? And if so, what should we be focusing on instead?
Ooh.
Amanda, do you want to start with that?
Oh, well, I'm not a professional show jumper, so I can't come at it from that perspective. If I jump 2 feet, which I don't, I'm an American, I don't do metric. That's plenty high enough for me. As riders, I feel like, and I feel like it's good. Like the riders should be focused on what makes them comfortable and what the horse can do to perform. However, I feel like it gets a bit muddy where the rider goes, well, I like this, and I'm coming at it from a saddle thing. I like this saddle. I feel very comfortable in it. Therefore, I know my horse is comfortable, which is actually, if you've ever been married or had a relationship where you've lived together with somebody, you know that's not the case. My husband, it works away 2 weeks out of the month. And when he leaves, I turn the thermostat to what I like. And for 2 weeks, I'm perfectly comfortable. And when he comes home, the first thing he does is he kisses me hello, and he goes straight to the thermostat and turns it to what he wants. And so for 2 weeks, he just assumes that I'm comfortable in his temperature. And so for riders, I think we get very comfortable, and the saddle industry has basically promoted that. Well, if the rider is comfortable, then the horse will be comfortable. I feel like there has been an incredible disconnect between rider comfort and horse comfort based a lot on breeding, selective breeding, and then of course the demographic change from the early 1900s to now 2026. I feel like if the rider's kind of focused on saying, well, I know I'm comfortable, this is what the horse needs to be comfortable, and then we come together, then we would be doing much, much better. I feel like we can both compromise a little bit, but right now the horse is doing all of the compromising.
True. Anne?
Yes. For this question, well, there's this NLP communication stuff coming again. He asked, "Are we asking the wrong question?" And I think we do a lot of stuff in the right way, but they do not know what they do not know. And if you do not know what you do not know, and there's a bigger and bigger and growing group of people calling out and saying there's more information, there's new information, then you should, it's your responsibility to your horse, educate yourself in a higher level, raise this bar. I think I've been on a jumping stable for 10 years with my riding school, and the other side was the jumping, stading, and breeding the jumping horses. What I've seen that riders that jump professionally are easier for their horses as the dressage riders. There's a big difference. Dressage riders are, how do you call that? Micromanaging. And the jumpers are a little bit more relaxed, laid back. Horses love that. There are a lot of riders horses love to be ridden by because they are so relaxed. They're a little bit less relaxed when they have horses who are stopping for a jump or something, doing the halt and saying, well, you can jump it yourself, I'm not going to do it. And then I would like them to learn more about learning theory and how to train or retrain or get a horse accustomed to the environment, to the jumps, to all of that stuff. That would be nice if they get that education more up to level. But I don't think we're asking the wrong question. As long as you ask questions, you are far better than people who are dominating the horse and using pressure and a lot of spurs and a lot of whip, and you shouldn't. That's not horseback riding.
I like that. Amanda, coming back to you. If you could ban one common saddle fitting practice tomorrow, what would it be and why?
Oh, I love this question. This makes me so happy. I would ban fitting saddle slip. I would ban the things that we do in the saddle to fix saddle slip. So for those of you who don't know, saddle slip is when the saddle moves to one side in all or most gaits, and it will stay to that one side. It won't go to both sides, right? So if the saddle doesn't fit, it generally goes to both sides. But when the horse is moving so crookedly that he like shunts the saddle to one side, that's called saddle slip. There's been veterinarian peer-reviewed studies where they've shown that the most common cause of that is lameness, and it can either be hind end lameness or shoulder injury. But as we all know with horses, everything is connected. And so when you have a hind end issue, it always translates into the shoulders as well. Or if there's a shoulder injury, it translates into the hind end. And the current thought process now is, oh, well, you know, if there's saddle slip, you can girth the horse asymmetrically to keep the saddle centered. You can flock it, you can shim it, you can bend the tree, et cetera, et cetera. And it's everything but actually addressing what's really going on, which the horse is so crooked and so uncomfortable that they are shunting the saddle to one side. And the issue becomes when we center the saddle, we create quite a lot of torque on the horse's back. And then the rider goes, "Ooh, I feel straight again." And then they completely ignore the fact that they need to actually treat the horse for, and I'm not allowed to say lameness. However, the vets that have done the studies have said the horse is lame. And so we are basically ignoring lameness in favor of allowing the rider to continue to ride. And I can tell you from experience, because I was taught in all of my younger years as a saddle fitter to do just that. I know how to flock a saddle asymmetrically. I know how to girth a saddle asymmetrically. I've used shims to as many times. I mean, I can't even count the number of times I've done just this, and it never works. It absolutely 100% of the time makes the horse more lame because the rider goes, "Oh, I can ride again." And ethically, it's irresponsible. So I would love to see that when if the saddle fits, which again, if the saddle didn't fit, it would go both ways. That we take the rider off and we go, "We're not fitting that. We're going to rehab the horse until he's straight," and then
cool.
move forward.
Love that.
Yeah. It's very controversial. Very. Because the Society of Master Saddlers put out an article recently where their master saddler and master saddle fitter said that you should call the saddle fitter first to have the saddle either asymmetrically girthed, asymmetrically flocked, or shimmed, and then maybe call your veterinarian.
Great. I think you've both said this, and I think it's interesting because riders want to ride.
Riders want to ride.
So
I do too.
So everyone's trying to keep the wheels of the machine rolling.
Which in turn is making it worse because
absolutely, and then your horse is out permanently.
Yeah.
Then your horse lands up on Amanda's necropsy table. Hopefully not.
Yes. But then it just feeds the machine, because then the person goes out and buys another high dollar horse. I mean, that's the thing. It feeds the machine. I mean, when you don't know what's wrong, you buy more tack. Well, that feeds the tack machine. When your horse goes lame prematurely, you go buy another horse. That feeds that. When, more body work, more training, more saddles, more everything. I think one of the reasons why people have such an issue with me as far as saddle fitting goes is my solutions are a gym membership, a personal trainer, the most basic tack possible. And it's not really feeding the saddle industry machine.
That's great. A gym member. Call your saddle fitter. No, go to the gym.
Yeah.
That's great.
Well, when your saddle fitter tells you to go to the gym, maybe listen.
And on the topic of someone being told to go to gym, riders are constantly given what we consider universal teaching commands. They must sit still, do more, use less. But what does effective communication actually feel like from a biomechanics perspective?
I do not believe I can really understand your question.
So, so instead of us falling back on the typical language of soft hands, for example,
Yeah.
how do we really communicate biomechanically the correct aid effectively to
Ah,
the readers?
oh, that's not so hard. That's an easy one. The moment you can, if you say to a rider, you have to sit still, the first thing you can ask is how.
Nice.
And if you can explain how, that's a long story to sit still, that's a big one. But also, when a rider has no connection with one rein, for example, I can say to the rider, you need better connection with your reins, but that's vague. I
Mm,
can also say to the rider, can you take your reins 3 fingers shorter and move your elbow slightly backwards but stay flexible? That's an objective way of explaining how it can be, what to do. And then we can also make the riders look at how we do it or tell them about it or make them feel, grab their arm, make them feel how this
mm,
arm can be flexible. But our explanation should be spot on,
mm.
never fake. Sit still, you don't have to use your legs that much. How? Because they're in a pattern of moving, and there's nothing as stubborn as a pattern. You
Okay.
cannot change your patterns
Mm,
in one miracle moment. You have to understand what has to be changed and how to do it. And yeah, I think getting objective in your teaching, like upper body of the rider is balanced when it's at about 6 o'clock. Can you imagine that?
yeah.
um, like sitting on 6 o'clock is like according to gravity. Yeah, while trotting, seating trot, while doing seated trot, for example. Well, I can adjust a rider, which I explained this 6 o'clock stuff. You have to work with gravity. And after they understand how the 6 o'clock works in their hip joints, we explain, we show, we make them feel. Then I can ask a rider going around me in the arena, can you adjust yourself a little bit, 1 minute more, one
Nice.
minute more? And this really small adjustments, they um, are shown in how the horse moves, if he is in an upward tendency, or when we adjust the seat, then he immediately goes to a downward tendency. When I loosen up the reins, when I say you have to put your hands about, that's a nice one. That's also nice. Riders lean backwards, and then they have been taught that they should be with their elbows next to their bodies. So
Mm,
they take their elbows backwards. Mm. It makes the
mm,
problem bigger, and you're leaning into your arms. The moment when you sit at 6 o'clock, then your elbows are also next to you. But then we say to the riders, instead of put your elbows backwards, put yourself between your elbows, and then the hand
mm.
softens. That's kind of the way we talk. Like, it's also nice. Ask a rider, any level, have you got seat bones? Yeah, I've got seat bones. And then you ask them, have you got 3 seat bones?
How many?
And then they are like, 3 seat bones? And they start feeling like, oh,
Yeah.
I got only two. Oh, great. Otherwise, we
Okay.
should have called a doctor. And then you have to go on because they say, yes, I think I feel my seat bones, then they are on the wrong spot. Because you can use your bump muscles. I don't know how that's called in English. So
That's
your
bum muscles is perfect English.
Perfect.
okay, you can, if you put tension in your bump muscles, your seat bones leave the saddle,
Mm,
and they're not, well, you sometimes you can feel them, and Also, people can say, yeah, but I'm a little bit big, so I can't feel my seat bones, as big as it gets. Everybody is able to feel their seat bones in a very clear way. Seat bones in a saddle should feel like my elbow. I'm small, I'm skinny. My elbow, it's hard stuff, it's the
Mm,
hardware on a wooden plank. If that's what you feel with your seat bones, then you've got seat bones.
mm,
And then we can start talking about how to adjust those seat bones vertically, horizontally, making the balance in the horse. Because there's this question. It's this is a difficult one. I would like to know what Amanda knows about that one. I have been taught about horses flipping saddles. Well, if they flip it all the time and it's not adjustable, I agree with you. But I have been told that horses are a little bit shifted always. They have this easy side and this a little bit harder side because in nature, when they flee for a lioness or something, then they use their back legs so fast that they go in front of the front legs. And if you're not a little bit torqued, that then the hind legs will hurt the front legs. What is your idea about that one?
Me? I've
Yeah, I
not
would
heard
love
that
to know.
actually. Yeah, I have not heard that ever. I can't imagine. I would have to ask a um, someone that is educated in wild horses. Basically, my education is dealing with horses that have been bred to
You
be
can see
ridden.
it in race horses too, huh? You
Yeah,
see a picture of race horses, and their hind feet are far in front of their front
yeah,
feet.
yeah. They're also going in a circle, so that you're going to be
have those
racehorses at
lapses.
least. Yeah, at least racehorses, at least in the United States, are prefer the left bend for sure. Anatomically, the horse has no clavicle, so the collarbone, right? Humans are right-handed or left-handed based on the fact that we write. We've been taught to write with just one hand. We drive, in the United States, we drive on the right. In the UK, they drive on the left. And so I believe there's been some studies where it shows that um, the right-handed drivers and the people who are right-handed tend to make their horses more right-handed, and vice versa. The people who drive on the left or are left-handed tend to make their horses left-handed. It's to me, it doesn't make sense for a horse to be handed or dominant because they don't drive cars and they don't write. And they don't have the type of brains that we have. And if we're riding horses correctly, meaning when you do dressage and you do a dressage test, you do the same amount on the left and the same amount on the right with the idea that you're making the horse symmetric. When we do rehab on horses that come in, 100% of the horses that come in are asymmetric. And the reason why they come in is because they're lame or they're unable to perform because they're asymmetric. As they progress through rehab, they become more symmetric. Depending on their obvious injuries, if they've had fractures, rib fractures, whatever, they may never be perfectly symmetric. But if you think about it, a horse with no clavicle, with their forelimbs only being held on with ligaments, tendons, muscles, and fascia, they should be able to be symmetric if we're training them correctly, minus obvious injuries. And so I don't know if that's actually true as far as the purpose bred domesticated horses. That like my horse wouldn't like, I don't know if she'd know to run from something. She's fairly brave. Like, we have a bunch of coyotes that come through and she's like, hey, you want to hang out? So, I don't know. So I don't know if I can answer
Sounds
that
like she's got the
question
survival
predominantly.
instincts of a potato. That's great.
Pretty much,
Okay.
I mean, they're called dumb bloods for a reason.
Yeah.
So, but at least in practice for saddle fitting for ridden horses, we want to see the horses as symmetric as possible. And in order for them to move correctly, evenly, because they support approximately 65% of their weight on their forelimbs. If their forelimbs are not symmetric, meaning they can't be right-handed or left-handed, if they're not symmetric, they're actually uneven. And the definition of unevenness is lameness, or sorry, the definition of lameness is unevenness.
Unevenness.
So yeah.
That's great. A dressage pupil asks, how much responsibility lies with coaches and professionals versus riders when it comes to horse welfare and performance? Amanda, I know you have some
Huge.
strong feelings of that.
Huge. I mean, I can go back to, if you hire a personal trainer and you have no idea about exercise, or even if you do have an idea, like I've been lifting my whole life. So I feel like I've got a good idea about form for like deadlifts and things that can really, really hurt you. But if my personal trainer says to me, oh, you're doing a deadlift wrong, you need to round your back and use your back to pull that weight up. And I don't know what I'm doing. I might actually like hurt myself. I feel like if you're going to bill yourself as a trainer or a coach and you don't understand muscles and you don't understand at the very least basic anatomy and saddle fit, then you're not really in a position to help your students train the horse correctly. And again, we go back to your thing about cutting the bum of the chicken off because, you know, the pan wasn't big enough. People do what they're taught, and very few people question, because we are at least in the horse industry, we're very performance based. So I've had many riders say to me, well, the horse does it and he wins, so it must be correct. Well, I have at least 400 pictures of horses with bloody withers and terrible backs and horrible posture and videos with conflict behaviors of 5-star horses that are absolutely doing their jobs, but they're not healthy or comfortable.
Sure.
And so a coach has the ultimate responsibility to make sure not only that the horse is comfortable and doing their job correctly, and that the rider is able to influence the horse correctly. But I see many, many trainers just pushing the riders up the levels, and the horses are horribly crooked and the riders are crooked, either because they don't understand or know to check. But I think even more that their paycheck is affected because the rider will not continue to ride with them if they're not advancing up the levels. And they go, well, I'll just go to somebody that will push me up the levels. And really, the true responsibility comes with the rider knowing what is correct. But of course, we always listen to our coaches and trainers. And as I've said before, if we all took a stand, if all of the professionals took a stand and said, saddle fitters, we're not going to fit an unhealthy horse. Trainers, we're not going to push the riders up the levels if they're not actually straight and the horse is sound, right? And judges, we're not going to reward horses that are, you know, hypermobility and not performing correctly, et cetera, we would be in a much better position. There would be World War III for sure for a year. But if we all stood firm and said, we've got to stop now, and everyone's going to suffer for a year, and then we're all going to get back on the right track, we would be so much better.
We're already
so much
headed
better.
to World War III, so we may as well make it better for horses.
I know, right? Let's go.
You know?
Let's go. I'm ready.
The Dutch lady's looking away. And for you, how much responsibility lies with the coach versus the rider?
Well, gradually, I think the responsibility of the rider is getting bigger. There is more information out there. We know more now. Everybody can see it. Everybody can read it. There's something going on. I used to say when I took over this riding school, looking at my riders, why aren't you able to? When I started with them, I didn't work with them yet, and I was looking at them. How can it be that they ride like this? Is it their responsibility? No, I think it's the trainers. The trainers are teaching them that stuff to go with your hands, so the bridle and the horse bends his neck and stuff like that, or kick him, or. And then I looked at the instructors and I thought, but who taught you?
Great.
And then you go back, and I do agree with Amanda that the more traditional the books are, the older the books are, the better the books are. It's getting more vague in the last 30, 20 years. I have this old, you got your old traditional book. I've got an old traditional book that's made in the Netherlands about, the instructor of instructors, the trainer's guide. And it's from, I believe, 1950 or something released. It's great. It's exactly all there, but it's old language and people don't read those books anymore because it's too long and too many words and I can't concentrate and that. And there comes the responsibility for the writer. If you feel that you need spurs or special reins or a sharper mouthpiece or pressure or strength, then you should think about what is happening. If your trainer is calling you, Mark, or go on, do more pressure, then it's your responsibility too, because we all know that horseback riding, we all agree that it should be done in a way that the horse is comfortable. Point.
Love that.
And you feel
Great.
it if you are in your competition and you're jerking your reins. How honest can we be?
It can't be right.
Yeah.
Amanda, back
I think people are blind for their own mistakes, and they should open their eyes. I'm jerking my reins. I'm using my spur too often.
And I think we do have a lot of methodologies available. There's videography, there's mirrors, there's things that weren't available as widely as they are now, that we can look at it and be self-critical. And as you said, no, that's not how we should be going. Amanda, riders often rely heavily on saddle pads to adjust their saddles. How effective is this?
I love this question. Again, really good question. Okay. So a saddle pad or a half pad, we'll just say a half pad because your regular saddle pad that you just normally put under your saddle is not really going to affect the saddle that much. Although we will go into the materials of saddle pads in the symposium because I feel like that's very important with all of the new materials like the sparkly glitter and stuff like that actually can make the saddle a bit more slippery. But let's talk about half pads. So half pads have been marketed. Like there's one half pad advertisement that says save thousands on vet bills, which is
a bold
statement. That's very arrogant and very bold, but good for them. So a half pad is only going to make the saddle, a good fitting saddle, fit better. It is never going to make a bad fitting saddle fit at all. I love half pads. I am not a saddle fitter that tells you that if you have a custom saddle that you don't need a half pad because that's absolute BS. I think of half pads like this. When you build a house, okay, you first put a foundation down and it has to be a strong foundation. And that foundation has to be rated for how much weight that house is going to exert on it. And that foundation has to be put on a place that is basically even, right? The ground has to be even. It has to be strong enough to support the foundation. And so I think of the horse's back like the foundation. And we're never going to have perfect symmetry in the horse's back because we ride them. And the saddle inherently, at best, the saddle does nothing to the horse's back, but no matter what we do, the saddle always depresses the spine, meaning it always pushes down on the spine. And so we're always going to create some sort of asymmetry when we ride a horse. And so the saddle is a symmetric object designed to sit on healthy top line muscle. If the horse's back is asymmetric within reason, then when we put the symmetric saddle on the horse's back, we're going to have some sort of shifting. I'm not talking about saddle shift or saddle slip. I'm talking about just the normal asymmetry. And so I love using a half pad to make that saddle fit better. And when you use the right half pad, and we can go back to the previous question about myths and misconceptions and things that we're doing wrong, is your half pad has to be chosen for what you're trying to make your saddle fit better. So if I need a little bit more room at the base of the withers, then I need to choose the half pad that does this. And so I love having the tools at my disposal, but I realize that you're never going to flock your way out of a bad fitting saddle.
Yes.
You're never going to shim your way out of a bad fitting saddle. And coming at it from that perspective is what we do a lot of disservice for the horses. But I also realize that riders go, well, I have this saddle and I'm going to ride in it, so just make it work. And again, if we could all stand up and be like, look, I don't need you to buy the most expensive saddle, but we do need to saddle your horse correctly, or we need to wait to ride until you have a good fitting saddle. And all of us across the board could be like, yeah, I'm standing with that person because we've got our, like everyone's agreeing on the same criteria. The horses would be a whole lot better. Again, World War III. I'm here for it. I'm an American. We're well armed. I'm ready. I'm absolutely ready.
And as a biomechanical specialist, what are the biggest rider asymmetries or weaknesses that you see, and how do they impact the horse?
Well, the lack of mobility in the lumbar flexion and in the lumbar region, and lack of mobility in the hip joints. That's the biggest one.
Okay.
People lean backwards, making tension in their bump, or lifting themselves from the saddle, or gearing up because the horse is going too fast. Then it's all static. When a hip joint is static, then other parts of the body begin to move. If the movement of the horse is not absorbed by the pelvis and the lumbar region of the rider, then the head starts nodding, or the hands start shaking, or things like they cannot keep their knees on the saddle, they go up and down or flip in and out, things like that. So you can adjust the rider and start in the middle with the pelvis movement and possible movements, but a lot of people have different ways of learning, and also different ways of making tension a little bit more to the left, or a little bit crooked like this, or there are all individuals. And movement is also a pattern, it's a movement chain. So if I pull up my heels, for example, then I'm starting to get tension in my bump, or I get tension in my bump and I start to pull up my heel. So it doesn't make a great difference to start in the middle or start at the feet of the rider. You just have to start. And it's a puzzle, and there are a lot of pieces to this puzzle, and we can't do magic. We have to do it together. And those patterns, the moment you understand what needs to be done, then you have to check, can I do that? Do I have this flexibility or range of motion? Or usually people can do that because there is not so much acrobatics going on the horse's back if you are just a rider. So there are not extreme things asked of a rider's movement. It's all small and balanced and harmonious and soft, and that should be. And working on this change.
Do you do mounted and dismounted exercises with people on the demo? Okay.
Yeah, both.
Okay.
And I love it to put those two together, do a piece of dismounted exercise, and then take it onto the horse, so that the horse is not the victim of what we are doing. Yeah, well, it's nice if the rider already is working, but we also work with people and they have wishes and dreams and things we have to work through. And so sometimes I compromise. Yes, not too much, a little bit. Uh, in the end, the rider needs to be able to go with the movement of the horse.
Mm.
Point. If it's not, then you should keep working on that stuff. And if your saddle for you is not comfortable, I know that a lot of what I see, that a lot of hip joints are stiffened or made static by these big pillows, cushions on the saddle where they lean to with their upper legs. Can please all the saddle fitters get those stuff off and give me a
Thank
traditional
you.
saddle with no grab, please?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, yeah,
Thigh
well,
blocks are the devil.
yeah, yeah.
Thigh
I
blocks for
hate,
the devil. I feel another bumper sticker coming on.
Oh my God.
yeah, but they don't know what thigh blocks are in the normal city center, I think. But
Yeah.
Um,
yeah,
Amanda, to come back to you, what subtle signs of poor saddle fit do even experienced riders miss every day?
Oh, the conflict behaviors. So Sue Dyson, who is a vet in the UK, did the pain ethogram and she listed conflict behaviors
We actually
and just
interviewed her. Sorry, I have to do a shameless plug.
alpha.
We actually interviewed her here on the SAEF podcast.
Nice.
So people can look up on the YouTube channel the Sue Dyson interview on the 24 behaviors of pain.
Perfect. That. And it's really being promoted by the equestrian influencers. I see it. I'm fairly active on social media because that's kind of where my teaching
Mm.
platform is. And I really feel like people they film themselves riding and you see the tails just doing their, like this, and the ears are pinned and the mouths are open. So they tighten the flash, and the horses are girthy and they get whacked for it. It's just like, I mean, I'm not really on TikTok, but you go on TikTok and that's all you see nowadays. And so, it's being normalized, right? It's like the
Mm.
more that you see it, and I mean, it's marketing, right? They say that if you see it 7 or 10 times, then you start to remember it. And when we have well, we don't really see the pro riders get girthed up so much, but we definitely see the influencers. And I don't know, I watch 40 people a week get girthed up, tacked up. And so I see a lot of horses with massive conflict behaviors, either, during saddling, during mounting, or when they're being ridden. And because these people are watching social media, or they're watching the dressage world finals or show jumping where the horse is bucking after a jump, and they go, oh, the horse was just super happy. No, it's so normalized. And I feel like if everyone could just please go to your YouTube and watch that, it's so
Mm.
important. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's just the saddle, or it doesn't mean any one thing necessarily, but it's something that we need to investigate for sure.
And if I can come to you, why do so many riders plateau even when they're working hard and training regularly?
why do so many riders?
Why do they plateau in their performance? Why does the performance just stop improving, even though they feel like they're still working hard?
That's a nice one. Because trainers don't have patience with their riders. Um, in my personal adventure, getting my body to do what I wanted my body to do, I learned that for one, I do not have to be angry with myself. Let's say my left hand, it's all started with my left hand because it was pulling backwards all the time. And I didn't want my left hand to pull backwards. Somebody told me, hey, you're pulling back. And I started to learn that I wanted my left hand to do something else. And every time I saw myself or felt myself pulling back again with my hand, I said to myself, hey, watch out, you're doing it again. You are my left hand. I'm the boss. You're not going unaware of what I'm doing. I'm aware. So getting aware of a movement pattern is really taking time. And it's been said that you need about 1,500 great repetitions consciously before you can take this pattern in a unconsciously with you. Like how do you call this? A nice line that the moment I have these patterns in my body, I will do it automatically and I don't have to think about it anymore. But we as trainers, we keep talking to the people and calling different stuff. I think sometimes it's really wise just to pick one thing, like a feet, like a foot, for example, turned in instead of a heel turned out. If they turn their toes in, you get a different situation than they
Different
turn their heels
activation,
out.
movement chain.
One is, yeah, yeah.
Mm.
But I explain it to the rider. I make them feel how it feels not to turn and how it should be in the hip joint. We talk about it. They felt it. They saw it. I show them with my own leg on the ground. And then they start riding again. And then I have this magical word, your foot. Again, your foot. And I have to do that together with the rider, maybe 1,500 times. And then they can change this pattern. But then they say, yeah, but it was a lesson only about my foot. But if I changed your foot for the rest of your life, this was a very wordful lesson.
Mm.
And
Absolutely.
yeah, so there's a little
Yeah,
bit of, yeah,
I love
sometimes
that.
they get a little bit annoyed
It's
that
going to be
I
a
just,
great little thing that's going to unlock the next level.
well, if you are able to get a part of your body to do what you ask, that's then you, if you can do it with your left hand,
Mastery.
then you can do it with your
Mm.
right foot
Yeah.
or your head because you know how to do it, and then the rest of it is just work.
We've had for both of you, I've had this come from several high performance riders in one way or another. What is one uncomfortable truth the industry needs to face right now if it wants to move forward? And you've both alluded to this. Amanda, do you want to go first?
Yes, absolutely. Um, we need to come to terms with the fact that performance is so the industry is very performance based and we need to be welfare based. And that's not to say that we need to say, oh, I mean, I'm not a PETA person, I eat meat. I think animals can absolutely be used for um, professions. But we need to come at it from, is this horse comfortable? And we need to have a consensus about what horses, the behavior of horses that are comfortable. Um, and we're also pushing the envelope for these horses. There was a 4-star event last weekend here in my area, and the questions just keep getting harder and harder for these horses. They've taken away some of the things that were more innate to horses, like roads and track and stuff like that, that the horses could perform and do it comfortably, and made it more spectator
Orientated.
driven.
Mm,
Yep. They need a
challenge.
smaller area so that the spectators can see. They need it bigger and crazier so that they stay engaged. And what we really need to do is get back to, are these horses comfortable? What can we do to make them comfortable? You know, the rub is we need money. As the middle class goes, which is absolutely what is happening, and there's a greater divide between the super rich and middle class. We've gone to this, and we need to really get back to what's important for the horse, and how can we keep these horses sound and able to perform into their
Yes.
senior years.
And what's one uncomfortable truth that we need to
Well,
face to move forward?
the horses are not here to serve us.
Mm,
Even all the other animals are not here to serve us. We are here on one planet with all these beautiful animals and nature, and we are consuming it and only thinking about humans. I think the same message as Amanda gave. Horses are, yeah, not our servants. I think it's what's happening now. It's kind of too much modern slavery. We use horses for our own
For recreation.
feeling good, yeah, and earning money, and I don't think it's ethics.
And the last question for both of you. Amanda, if someone attends your sessions at the International Biomechanics Symposium, what is one thing you hope to fundamentally shift for them?
I want them to understand anatomy as it is related to saddle fit. So I want them to walk up to their horse and be able to say, "This is the withers. This is the trapezius. This is your scapular cartilage. This is where the saddle should sit." I don't want to turn them necessarily into saddle fitters, but I want them to be able to have an educated conversation with a lot of critical thinking. I want to teach them how to critically think about their saddle fit, because a lot of what's
That's
going
great.
on is, they're kind of being gaslighted. Oh, your horse is fine. The saddle fits perfectly. Or, the vet says, "Oh, I can't find anything wrong with your horse," but the horse has conflict behaviors and is incredibly uncomfortable. And the riders go, "Well, I don't know what to do. I want to tell you, I want to teach you. I don't want to tell you, I want to teach you how to think so that you can figure out what's going on with your horse."
That's great. Anne, what would you like
Well,
riders to take away from your sessions?
maybe would be very nice one small insight in how to adjust yourself to the horse when you're on the horse. That would be great, because when it starts, you can't stop it. If you feel that you can communicate with your body in a different way and the horse is reacting to that in a positive way, most riders are hooked. What can I
And
do for you instead of what can he do for me?
and they're going to have that small shift, and they'll have a real impact from it.
Maybe we have big shifts, huh? That would be miraculous.
Even
That would
better.
be very nice. And we will do our utmost best to change as much people and in biggest ways possible. But I'm a bit older. I've been a long time in this industry. I'm hopeful, but I'm also a bit wiser, and knowing that it takes time and it takes work. And when everything is exactly in place, then we have a chance. But before you've got everything exactly in place, well, then the farrier and the saddle fitter and the mouth bit fitter and you and the rider and the trainer, it all should come together. But it's lovely when it comes together. So it's a nice dream to dream.
It'll be an addictive feeling, and then we'll get ready for the second International Biomechanics Symposium next year.
Yeah, but
Love it.
horseback riding is already, we know that it's addictive. It's
Yeah,
something with the endocrine
the
system, and
most the most addictive substance on earth,
yeah,
and the most expensive.
I was about
yeah,
to say.
that's it.
Um,
Yeah,
I want to say thank you, Anne and Amanda. You both have been
Thank
so
you.
fantastic, and I'm so looking forward to the Biomechanics Symposium. If you've been watching this is the South African Equestrian Federation's podcast on the upcoming first International Biomechanics Symposium being run by the Centerline Collective. And the symposium, we just spoke now to Anne Muller, who is a biomechanics expert, and to Amanda, who is our saddle fitting guru. And this is catering for riders who are wanting to improve balance, feel, and effectiveness, coaches who are seeking clearer tools to support their students, horse owners who are focused on welfare and longevity, body workers, saddle fitters, judges, and all professionals or enthusiasts who want better tools to support their sport, their students, children, and their horses. So I would encourage everyone to visit the centerlinecollective.co.za to find out more information. I believe all of the demo, the clinicians have done a video there, so you can find out more information and book I think we're going to have a great time. Thank you, ladies, for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.